McLaren have had a modest weekend in Monza that could have gone extremely bad after the turn 4 pass that Piastri completed on Norris. But with a P2 and P3 finish for the Papaya team, they've managed to cut down 32 points in the constructors and 8 points in the drivers' championship to Verstappen. Be that as it may, the situation is far from perfect in McLaren because they have 2 competitive drivers and just one who is in catching distance of Verstappen in the drivers' championship. So this has rung the alarm bell in Woking as Brown admitted that they would have to have a talk with Piastri and prioritise Norris in the remainder of the season. How will this reflect on Piastri, and can Oscar oblige to the team rules the same way that Norris did back in Hungary? It's safe to say that the Monza GP didn't really turn out the way that McLaren would have planned it after a dominant 1-2 start of the race, mostly because of Piastri's pass on Norris that forced the Brit to brake harder and open the door for Leclerc as well. In a race in which everything is so close in terms of competitiveness, things like this are determining the outcome of the race, and right now McLaren are on the receiving end of things because what could have been around a 19 to 20 point cut down of the lead to Verstappen has turned out to be just an 8-point advantage in favour of Norris. And this is something that McLaren shouldn't allow in the following period, because even though Norris has lost the lead on his own, the pass of Piastri was definitely on a very difficult part of the track that could have got both of the drivers out and end up with 0 points in both championships. This is something that has been discussed by Norris as well, who said that the move of Piastri was too close for comfort. As he said, obviously I would have just braked a bit later if I needed to. We had a big gap behind, and between us 2 cars there is no risk. I feel like Piastri got way too close for comfort. We both easily could have been out in that corner if I had braked 1 meter later. Obviously if I could rewind I would do stuff slightly differently, but it is what it is. Oscar drove a good race and so did Shah. Furthermore, Norris did keep his head up high and said that he wouldn't like to beg the team to administer team orders in the same way that they did in Hungary when his race engineer promised him that he would need Piastri in the later stages if he is to fight for the championship. As of now, the situation is nowhere near that, and it seems like Norris will have a much bigger threat from his teammate than Verstappen in the remainder of the season, considering that Red Bull are not really in contention in Baku or Singapore due to the massive deficit they have compared to Ferrari and McLaren right now. This is not an environment in which you would be able to win a drivers' championship, and while the constructors are more or less secured if Ferrari doesn't manage to snatch it somehow by amazing performances in the remainder of the season, McLaren shouldn't have it too hard to win the first championship in this category in quite a while. But obviously having 2 dominant drivers up front is not the ingredient you need to fight for a drivers' championship in this situation, because this is not the golden era of Mercedes and 2016 with Rosberg and Hamilton, when the only competition was between themselves, or the Vettel-Webber battles back in 2013 and the infamous multi-21 message during the Malaysian GP. Norris now has the better opportunity to catch Verstappen due to the lower points deficit, one that is standing at 62 points and would have stood at 55 had the team not asked him to let Piastri ahead in Hungary, because the Aussie was leading the race up until the team messed up the strategy for him. I'm not blaming McLaren for playing the team game here, but there are situations that you would have to think in terms of the bigger picture. It wasn't Norris' fault that his teammate got his strategy ruined by no one but his own pit wall, and quite frankly Piastri was nowhere near close Norris in terms of passing him on a clear manner before the Brit finally decided to let go of the gas pedal and effectively give away 7 points. Zak Brown has opened up about the Piastri move in turn 4, and even though it was highly praised from the fans all around the world, as the majority of them believe that Piastri isn't here to be the second fiddle like Bottas was to Hamilton or Perez to Verstappen, the CEO of McLaren F1 has admitted that they will have a talk with the Aussie and will have to rediscuss the Papaya rules for 2024. Even though they allowed Norris to race Piastri in a clean manner, it's obvious that if they want to win the championship, a bit of team orders like what happened in Hungary may have to be applied in the next couple of races if the team finds themselves in a similar situation. Because for the first time in quite a while, Norris managed to lead the race after turn 1 but lost in 3 turns later. Adding further to how the situation would unfold down in McLaren, Brown said, "Oscar's move was aggressive. Both of their starts were great, and that was what we had discussed. Kind of get behind the other and fan out to make sure nobody else could get by." I think Lando was probably caught by surprise with that move, thinking, let's just tuck into a 1-2 and see if we can pull a bit of a gap. So it's something we'll discuss internally. Papaya rules are, it's your teammate. Race him hard, race him clean, don't touch. But that happened. It was an aggressive pass, so that is a conversation we will have. That was a bit nerve-wracking on the pit wall, but it's really just respecting your teammate. Lando got a bad run out of that corner as well, so it would have been nice to see them run 1-2 a bit longer. They didn't touch, it was an aggressive pass, but a clean pass. Even though it's a bit late right now, McLaren are starting to think about the Drivers' Championship, and according to Stella, team rules might be administered in a much more common manner than what they were up until this point, which would definitely help them in shedding more points from Verstappen in the remainder of 2024. Elaborating on this situation to a greater extent, Stella said, "Both drivers are mathematically in contention to win the championship, but Lando is obviously in the best position from a numbers point of view. We are fighting Max Verstappen, so if we want to support one driver, we definitely have to pick the one that is in the best position. Already in our conversations before the race, we acknowledged that Lando is in the best position from a Drivers' Championship point of view, so we will have conversations with Oscar, with Lando, and together, and then define our rules of engagement. Lando is doing very well, pole position at Zandvoort and Monza, and if anything with Lando, we need to adjust some little racing things that may help him capitalise on a pole position like we had here at Monza. I think if we look at his first lap, we will review it together, and we may see that there were a couple of things that we could have done slightly better." There is another paradoxical situation which we haven't paid enough attention to, and that is the fact that the next 3 drivers below Norris, who are Leclerc, Piastri and Sainz, are closer to him than he is to Verstappen. And while the momentum is on McLaren's side, and it would be definitely very hard to catch him up with this tempo, McLaren would have to be at the top of their strategy if they want to optimise all of the results in the limited amount of races they have left in 2024. This is something that has been pointed out by Hamilton as well, who went on to criticise the tactics of McLaren and believe that this is something that cost them a lot in the pursuit of the race win with at least one of their cars, as the 7-time world champion stated. Looking at the racetrack, I think McLaren had the pace, but they just pushed too hard. They were doing laps that were too fast early on, which killed the tyres. I guess they had planned for a 2-stop. If they just backed off and went longer, they could have made the 1-stop work. But I was getting the info of the times they were doing, and there is no way you can make the tyres last at that pace. All of this points towards a brutal scenario that needs to happen in McLaren sooner rather than later. They need to pick their number 1 driver if they want to win the Drivers' Championship. Unfortunately, they are not in a position in which their drivers are P1 and P2 with 100 points difference to the rest of the grid, so they can let them race in a clear manner. And the fact that Piastri's competitiveness is making Norris' challenge a bit harder, combined with the strategy woes in Silverstone and Canada, it's safe to say that McLaren have nobody but themselves to blame if they are going to miss on the championship very narrowly. With all this in mind, do you think that there is an opportunity in which McLaren would not win the Drivers' Championship with Norris? And even more importantly, do you think that Piastri would oblige to these team rules that would help his teammate in the same way that they helped him to achieve the maiden win in Hungary? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and once you've done that, have a look at the video that's appearing on your screen right now.